To let you know, this episode deals with the issues surrounding childhood trauma and spousal abuse. Welcome to Filmability. My name's Joel Fisher and I'm the author of Filmability, A History of Disability in Cinema, which you can find on Amazon in Kindle and paperback. Welcome if this is your first time joining me, and welcome back if you've listened before. Either way, if you haven't followed Filmability yet, then I would really appreciate it if you were able to do so. Thanks. This week's film is The Mighty, a 1998 film adaptation of the novel Freak, the Mighty, written by Robin Philbrick, who may very well have the best name I've ever heard. It's directed by Peter Tellson, who went on to direct films such as Serendipity with John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale, Shall We Dance with Richard Gere, Jennifer Lopez and Susan Sarandon, and Hannah Montana the Movie with Miley Cyrus, Billy Ray Cyrus and Vanessa Williams. The screenplay for The Mighty is also written by Charles Leavitt. He went on to write screenplays for Blood Diamond, In the Heart of the Sea and Warcraft: The Beginning. As always, I will be going through the plot of The Mighty, so if you want to watch the film before finishing the podcast, then I suggest you do so now. You can find The Mighty pretty much anywhere to rent buy digitally, but you may also be able to find it on YouTube, but you didn't hear it from me. So without further ado, let's go talk about the film. Okay, so the movie starts out overlooking a bridge, the sun's streaming across the sky, and there are various shots of the city with music and the credits playing over them. Then we're introduced to Max, played by Eldon Henson, and he's doing a voiceover talking about the Knights of the Round Table, talking about helping others and fighting bad people. The voiceover refers to somebody called Freak, and talks about living with his grandparents who look like the picture of Whistler's mother. The grandmother, Graham, is played by Gina Rowlands, and the grandfather, Grim, is played by Harry Dean Stanton. Cut to school, and Max is going through the corridors, and he's talking in voiceover about people staring and whispering at him because he's really tall and he's a chunky boy, he's a big fella. He's out in the town and some homeless people he sees are telling to go away, and he keeps talking about the bullies and about how he should be keeping away from them. In a bus, he's being harassed by the bullies, and one bully tells him that he's a freak of nature and that he has no friends. The bully talking about his size and refers to his dad, suggesting that his dad may have killed somebody. Then in his bedroom, Max says that he goes into his mind to escape, and the camera cuts to clouds. Back in his grandparents' place, they're talking, and they talk about a family where a man was in a special hospital, and this only reminds Max of his learning disability and how he thinks of himself. He looks over the fence to a neighbour, a little boy wearing glasses and a strange helmet with various magnifying glasses on it. This is the boy who he likes to refer to himself as Freak, but his mother calls him Kevin, and he's played by Kieran Culkin. Now you may think that Kevin referring to himself as Freak means that he's down on himself and he doesn't think that he's good enough. The way we talk to each other has power, the way we refer to ourselves has power. I know of people who use words like cripple, gimp and spaz to refer to themselves, but because of their disabilities, that's no worse than a bad person calling themselves or other bad people the N-word. That's because when we refer to ourselves with the words that others use to put us down, it changes the power balance. Kevin refers to himself as Freak, supposedly so that nobody else can do it because he's already doing it himself. He's shown to be funny and charismatic, but calling himself Freak enables people to realise the ableism in language and see him as the person he is behind his disability. What I'm saying is Freak is a very clever boy and a well-written character. However, there's ableist language used by non-disabled people which, in their eyes, is meant to be empowering. They see it as a way to dilute a person's disability and treat them like everybody else, but they do it by not treating disabled people like everybody else. Terms such as specially abled, challenged, handicapable, and my favourite, person with disability, are only highlighting that a person who uses terms like that doesn't see disabled people as fully fleshed out human beings. It's okay to use the word disabled to describe people like me, because quite frankly I don't think there's a better word to use to describe my disability. We shouldn't be using words like handicapped and the R word, and I'll go into specifically why that is another time. But all I'm asking is that you stop trying to come up with new words to describe us, as we're fine as we are. Besides, most of the time these new terms are made up without even consulting disabled people in the first place. So his mother Gwen comes out and she's played by Sharon Stone. She starts talking to her son and he starts talking about the things that he's studying. Gwen jokes that she gave birth to a dictionary and she goes back inside. Freak is then making a flying bird and he lets it go into the sky, and as Max watches, he's amazed. And as Max looks over his body, he notices Freak has a sort of curved spine and he's on crutches and he's a lot smaller than him, but a lot of people are. Although then Freak catches him and he makes fun of him. You can tell that Freak is quick-witted, intelligent, and an interesting character. At school, the bullies are in the gym, and they roll the basketball, and it hits Freak, making him fall over, even though he makes a joke about it. And unfortunately, though, the coach thinks that Max did it, and he orders him to help Freak up. Freak then angrily throws the basketball at Max, and then he tries to get him back on his feet. Max tells the audience that he has a learning disability and he's been made to feel like a dummy. And this seems like a good time to start talking about learning disabilities, because people often get learning disabilities and learning difficulties confused. A learning disability is a reduced intellectual disability. It can be identified soon after birth or in the early years of a person's life and will last for the rest of their life. Things such as household tasks, socialising, and managing money can be affected by a learning disability and can vary in level. People with learning disabilities can often be diagnosed with things such as autism and ADHD, although it's not the same for every case. A learning difficulty, on the other hand, can be identified in such things such as dyslexia, dyspraxia, or dyscalculia, and does not affect intellect like a learning disability can. However, this also ranges in levels and can highly affect a person's life or barely at all. It can also be very specific and only affect certain things in their lives. This may mean a person with a learning difficulty could need daily care for help getting on in life, or in cases like mine, on top of my spina bifida, I have a learning difficulty when it comes to maths, which is a common trait in people with spina bifida. Besides that, I just get on with my normal everyday life, and unless I have to do any hard sums, then I'm fine. I even took my maths GCSE 3 times because I thought I would need it, only to end up getting a D grade. Although it turned out I didn't even need it at all. At school, Max is waiting with his tutor and he turns out to be Freak. He gives Max a book and encourages him to read, but Max is reading slowly and Freak tells him to close his eyes as he reads it to him. He encourages Max to use his imagination. Freak also reminds Max that he's the only hope that he can have to pass his grade, because he's so much bigger than all the other kids in his classes because he's a couple of years older, because he's been held back. Max says it wasn't him that threw the basketball at him earlier, and Freak says he shouldn't let people push him around. In their own voiceover, Max says that he struggles to get through the chapter in the book that he was given, but Freak is patient, and they're both reading a book about King Arthur as they were before, and Freak suggests that he makes some money by helping him to go to the fireworks at the fairground. Freak says that his mother wouldn't go because she doesn't think it would be safe, but with Max with him, he knows that he'll be safe. At the fair, they're talking about their parents, and the bullies see them and make fun of them. Freak confronts them and the bullies get angry, but they can't get near them because they're behind a barrier. They're watching the fireworks and Freak can't see because he's so small, so Max, without thinking, picks him up and puts him on his shoulders. This shows Freak's having a good time. He's shouting, he's cheering, he's got a bag of popcorn and he's sort of throwing it about as well. He's just being a kid. After the fireworks, they see the bullies coming for them, and then they're making their escape with Freak on Max's shoulders. And he's guiding Max to where he needs to be by giving his body a gentle kick. It's explained in the movie that Max says he feels like they are one person, and that Freak is his mind and he is the body. They get to the seafront, and Freak suggests that they go into water. They're getting surrounded by bullies, so Max wades into the water and one of the bullies goes in after them. And he's holding a switchblade knife in his teeth. Max gets stuck and his head goes into the water. And the bully who's following them quickly gets stuck as well, although his friends help him out of the water. However, then the police arrive and take them away as Freak holds his arms up in the air in victory. Back at Max's place, the police take Max home and tell his grandparents that he saved Freak's life. Gwen comes back to thank him, and inside, Max's grandfather gives him a cup of coffee and says that he's proud of him. The next day, Freak taps on Max's bedroom window in the basement, but Max doesn't want to go with him because he was in danger the last time and he thought he was going to get killed. Freak suggests that a knight knows no danger, and they go out and they're shown walking across a bridge as a song plays. It's showing various parts of the city, including a barber shop and a strip club. They get to a diner where a man is roughing up his girlfriend. They're just going in to buy some candy, but Freak encourages Max to intervene, and as he does, it's implied that the man who is roughing up his girlfriend sees a figure of a knight on a horse, and he's really intimidated by Max. The man behind the counter says that the candy they want is on the house. They've done a good deed and they're getting a reward for it. They go through the streets and then they see a knight laying on the street looking proudly up at them. Very much an implied analogy for their deeds, as we are going to continue to see the knights throughout the movie. And then there's a shot of them on the bridge, with Freak and Max in the middle, and in the background there are a group of knights on horses and they're following them, so it's implied that Max and Freak are the noble knights and the most noble of all. At Freak's home, Max is happily tucking in, and he apologises because he's eating so quickly, saying that his grandmother doesn't cook like that, but Freak's mum says she doesn't mind. But then Freak suddenly starts choking on his food, and his mother checks on him, but he's alright. It's fine. In the car, we see some people running from the police, and Freak notices one of them shove a purse down a hole in a manhole cover. The next scene, Freak goes to Max's bedroom, and he has an idea of how he can help. The next thing you know, they're in a sewer, and they're retrieving the purse that Freak saw getting shoved into the manhole, and he says that they should return it. He says that Max should go down there and get it, because he's not going down there, because he's small and disabled, and, he's using excuses. Max is big and brave, so, he could do it. Max says he doesn't like rats, though, and Freak says that somewhere down there that there's probably a rat that says he doesn't like him either. Max goes down and he retrieves the purse, and it finds a lot of money in there and an ID. The bullies then turn up and corner them. It seems like it might have been a trap, and the bullies tell them to give them the purse. Max grabs a manhole cover though and fends them off, defending himself as if he was using a shield, and he angrily throws it and it causes sparks when it hits the floor. He's basically really angry, and it shows that he's able to defend himself and that he's standing up to the bullies. They then get to an apartment block to return the purse to the owner. A woman cautiously opens the door and he gives her the purse, but she pulls them both inside and she calls in her boyfriend. The woman's name is Loretta Lee and she's played by Gillian Anderson, and her boyfriend's name is Iggy and he's played by the rock legend Meatloaf. Iggy then asks who they are, and it seems that they know Max's father. Lois reminds Max how he couldn't speak after what his father did, and Max leaves angrily. It's bringing up a past trauma, and it's as if she treats him like his curiosity. Freak then goes after Max as he storms out the room, and Max tells him to go away, saying that he's been nothing but trouble, and ends up sitting on the bench, and Freak says that his mother told him that his father was a magician. He says he heard the word birth defect and he disappeared. He then tells Max that he's better than his father because a knight proves his worthiness through his deeds. In the next scene, there is a museum with a suit of armour and a round table, just like in the Arthurian legend. Freak gets a sword from one of the suits of armour and calls himself Freak the Mighty. In voiceover, Max says that they're never talked about their fathers again. At the gym, the coach is doing a roll call, and Freak is called out last as he sits on Max's shoulders. And then we cut to an office, and a woman is telling Gwen that people with physical disabilities can't take part in sports. Gwen says that Freak lives in his own world, but he's found a place there because Max has helped him, and she's not going to take that away from him. And she leaves, and telling the boy that if Freak does get hurt, she won't cry for him. So, she's letting him be a kid, really. Cut to the basketball court where Freak is dribbling a ball, and with Max's help, he sinks the basketball and the crowd cheers. At home, Max is in bed, and before he goes to sleep he says, "I shall not yield to you or any man," which is a quote from the book they've been reading. The next day, Max is called to the office, and she tells him that his father has been granted parole. Max gets angry. It's the trauma being brought up again, and he starts having a flashback involving guns and whatever else. It's really nasty what's implied in there. And then back at Max's grandpa's place, his grandfather is loading a shotgun. They start arguing, and his grandma says that they shouldn't even have the gun, but the granddad says that it's the best way to protect them. And meanwhile, Max is crying in his room. At school, Freak is slurping some spaghetti. Another child says he shouldn't eat such slop, and Max comes along and says that he's eating too fast. But Freak starts playing with his food. He's making the other kids laugh by doing impressions, but then he starts choking, and Max picks him up and he starts calling for help. Then we cut to a hospital. The doctor says that they need to talk to Gwen, so she goes away, leaving Max by Freak's bedside. Freak wakes up and starts doing an impression of Captain Kirk when Spock sacrifices himself in the Wrath of Khan, and they both start laughing because it was in that situation, Wrath of Khan, it's a real near-death situation, and that's pretty much what Freak is thinking he might have gone through if it wasn't for the help of Max. The doctor talks to Gwen, and he tells her that Freak's bone growth has stopped, while his internal organs will keep growing. He tells her that Freak has perhaps a year to live, and as she goes to a vending machine, he doesn't give her what she wants, and she breaks down in tears. But Max is there, and he says that he's going to help look after Freak, and if he does eat too fast, he's going to just dump the rest of it on his head. And this seems like a good opportunity to talk about Freak's disability, because up until now, the audience doesn't really know what Freak's disability is, and the doctor says that he has Morquio syndrome. Morquio syndrome, also called mucopolysaccharidosis type 4, or MPS4, is a rare inherited metabolic disorder caused by the body's inability to break down certain complex sugar molecules, otherwise known as glycosaminoglycans, because of missing or deficient enzymes. There are two main forms: type A, deficiency of the enzyme N-acetylgalactosamine 6, sulfatides. And type B, deficiency of beta-galactosidase. Both types cause a build-up of molecules like keratin sulfate that gradually damage cells and tissues. Morecambe syndrome appears in infancy of early childhood, often between the ages of 1 to 3, and children may start out as any other child would, but the symptoms progress slowly over time. The features of Morecambe syndrome are a short stature and disproportionate growth, skeletal abnormalities, e.g. curved spine or knot knees, and a looseness in the joints and limited mobility. Also, symptoms can result in respiratory issues and airway obstruction, as shown in the film, and cloudy corneas and vision problems, which probably explains why Freak wears glasses. Also, hearing loss is usually an issue, but this is the one thing that is not brought up during the film. Also, it's worth noting that intelligence is not affected by Morecambe syndrome, and is an especially pronounced feature of Freak's personality. Morecambe syndrome is rare because it has to be inherited from both parents, and probably partly explains why Freak's father ran away when he learned about his son's diagnosis. Although it's unclear as to whether it was available at the time that The Mighty was released, there is enzyme replacement therapy which can help treat Morecambe syndrome by slowing the progression of the condition. Surgery may also be needed for spinal or skeletal issues. And I'll talk more about what The Mighty gets wrong about Morecambe syndrome a bit later. Max says it took 2 weeks to come home, the longest 2 weeks of his life, and when he does come home, Max carries Freak back inside, and Freak jokes that he didn't even know that Max could write as he sees the Welcome Home banner. They go outside and Freak points out a building, saying that that's where there's going to be a new experimental treatment where they're going to give him a new body. He says that he's kept it a secret up until now, and Max says it could hurt, but Freak says he doesn't care, and he says that life is dangerous. This is very much Freak giving Max a bit of hope, because he had a near-death experience, and he doesn't want his friend to be worried about him, and probably Freak doesn't want to be thinking about what could happen to him at the end anyway. Anyway, outside, Max is playing basketball, and he starts to get freaked out. He's thinking his dad's watching. So he goes home, and he's crying, and he's looking at a photo of him and his father and the family, and says that he thinks he'll end up being just like him. And then Max starts to dream about what happened in the photo. It looks like a celebration or something, but there's some kind of trauma behind it, and he wakes up to have a hand put over his mouth, keeping him quiet. It turns out that his father has returned, for real, and puts him into his car, taking him away. And this is Kenny, his father, and he's played by James Gandolfini. In the car, Kenny seems deranged. He's talking about Max's grandparents poisoning his mind against him. Back home, the police arrive at Max's house, and they tell his grandparents that Max's father didn't turn up for a parole meeting, and they realise that Max has gone. Outside Max's house, Freak is searching for clues. He finds the photo that Max had earlier, and he notices that Iggy is in the picture, the boyfriend of Loretta that they met before. Freak then commandeers a van, and it starts to drive, because it's the only way he could think of getting there as fast as he can. However, Freak is a small child, a disabled child, and he can't drive all that well. It's not really clear how Freak can drive a van such as that, because even if he were able to walk properly, his feet don't even reach the pedals. However, you might be surprised at how many disabled people can drive. There are hand controls that can be used in cars to help physically disabled people who can't walk, and driving lessons are even open to people who can't hear. Deaf people have learned to adapt to the world by observing things with their vision because they cannot hear. So driving can be just as safe and adaptable for a deaf person because they are often observing the road ahead of them and things that would happen around them better than a person who would be able to hear. Back at Kenny's place, Kenny has Max tied to a radiator and tells him that he didn't kill anybody and he said he loved his mother. Meanwhile, Freak is getting to where he needs to be, but he's driving erratically and he ends up crashing into the side of a road. He then gets out and uses the van door as a sled, and he uses his crutches to help him to move along. He has a light from the roadwork attached to his hat as well. But then he loses grip of one of his crutches and starts to slide uncontrollably down the hill, screaming as he goes down. Sort of reminiscent of Home Alone, and I'm pretty sure that may have been the director's intention. Freak then crashes down at the bottom and he sees a vision of the knights on horses, as if they're encouraging him to get up. At Kenny's place, Loretta turns up with a plate of food, and she offers to cook for them. She comes in and she reveals some pliers on a plate and sneakily hands it to Max, and then goes to work on cutting himself free. She mentions how Max and Freak returned her purse, and Kenny starts to question Max about Freak. Freak makes his way inside the building, meanwhile, and a little girl in a nightgown comes up to him, and he tells her to call the police and to tell them to come to the building. Inside the building, Kenny gets angry that Freak may remember where they were, and thinks that he may know where Kenny would have taken Max. And in his anger, he attacks Loretta. He throws her down to the floor and gets on top of her and starts to strangle her. And Max is begging him to stop. Max then breaks free from his ties and says he remembers what his dad did to his mother. He gets angry and they fight. And then Freak arrives. He points a squirt gun at Kenny, saying it has sulfuric acid in it. And then he fires it at Kenny, but then Kenny lunges at Freak as he realises that Freak was lying. But then, luckily, the police arrive and they take Kenny into custody. At Max's place, his grandparents are celebrating Christmas. All the while, Jingle Bells is playing and Gwen is there too, and she helps them with the turkey. A montage plays of them eating and having fun, and as Freak and his mum go out the back door, Freak gives Max a book called Freak the Mighty, reminding him to use his imagination as he had done when they'd started reading together. Max goes back to his own doorstep, feeling proud of his abilities. Then an ambulance is seen outside Freak's house. Max's grandma tells him that Freak has died. Max then goes out to the ambulance, chasing it down, and Gwen gets out and tells Max that Freak's heart just got too big for his body, and that's what caused him to die. She then gets back in, leaving Max standing in the snow. He keeps running, though, going through the streets. Despite all this, he's got bare feet. And he ends up going to the place where Freak had told him that he was going to get experimental treatment for a new body. But it turns out the large building was just a laundry, probably for a hotel or something like that. And as he looks around at the confused employees inside, he breaks down into tears and realises that Freak wasn't true. And Max's voiceover then tells the audience that he stayed in his room for days and that he missed the funeral and even Gwen moving away. He says that his grandma even encouraged him to go out. In the next scene, Max is sitting on the bench and Loretta comes to sit with him, and her neck is in a brace. She gets on the bus and smiles as she watches him as the bus drives away. Next at school, Max stands up and answers a question that the teacher's asked about a book that they're reading. His answer is heartfelt and the teacher is quietly impressed. And then in voiceover, Max says that if he can now read, then maybe he can write a book, and that he started to write down his thoughts and kept writing until it was spring. But he says he doesn't quite know how to end it. He starts to read his King Arthur book, and the quote about the once future king. Max suggests that it means that somebody who was great will always be great, even after their death. He picks up the bird Freak had made earlier and sets it off to fly. He runs along some grass in the park watching it fly, and says that he will tell the story of Freak the Mighty and the things that he did as a noble knight. And then you cut to the knights among the trees, but they're also watching the birds. It flies above them and goes above the city. And up next, I'm going to be talking about the film overall and what I think the portrayal of disability would mean for the wider audience. The Mighty is a charming and tragic tale of friendship that pulls on the heartstrings, but never overdoes the emotion in order to make the audience feel pity for its lead characters. Max and Freak's relationship is based on their personalities and what they can do for each other, and not because of a bond through their disabilities. Max is shown what he can achieve if he's given a chance, and even grows in confidence against what people think of him and the bullies that torment his life. In turn, Freak's life becomes better because Max looks up to him as a friend and can help him to go places and do things that he never thought he could do before without making him feel like he has a carer. Overall, it's a heartwarming story about two boys trying to make the world a better place. However, there are certain things that are skimmed over and made more palatable for the audience so that it can be digested. For example, it's never really clear about the details of Max's learning disability, and it seems to be mainly about reading. Also, although Freak's disability is barely the focus of the character, when it's time to explain what his disability is, it feels like the explanation doesn't do it justice in order to make it prettier for the audience. And with that in mind, that's what I'm going to be talking about next. And now onto something that the Mighty doesn't exactly get right, or at least glosses over, about Morquio syndrome. Is that the life expectancy varies depending on the severity and the type of the condition. Many people with Morquio syndrome have lived into an adult life throughout their 20s and 30s, and there have even been reported cases of people living into their 60s who have milder cases. It's also important to state that life expectancy could be improved with medical care and therapies. Causes of early death include respiratory failure, spinal cord complications, heart problems, or complications of infections or surgery. The idea that Freak's heart grew too big for his body, which caused him to die in the film, may sound poetic, but it's ultimately not correct. Neither is the explanation of the condition that the doctor talked to Gwen about in the hospital. In real life, Freak's symptoms result from accumulations of substances in cells and tissues, leading to aggressive damage, not subtle internal crushing of organs, as suggested in the film. And up next, after a couple of weeks of silence, I've decided to bring back the trivia. Now, I haven't read the book, but it turns out that Robin Philbrick, who wrote the original book, also wrote the screenplay, but it was rejected because it was too much like the book. Originally, the movie was supposed to be called Freak the Mighty, just like the book, but Miramax, the studio that distributed the movie, found the title too offensive, so the title was changed to The Mighty. And I understand that because, although the audience knows why Kevin calls himself Freak, it's not going to be something that people are going to understand unless they've read the book beforehand. And probably my favourite bit of trivia, Kieran Culkin and Eldon Henderson would go on to star in She's All That, which is only a year later in 1999. I haven't seen that film for ages, but that little bit of trivia is so funny considering how good The Mighty is, and, well, it was She's All That afterwards. The book King Arthur and the Knights that Kevin reads Max is seen on screen as Sir James Thomas Knowles, the 1860 version. Yet the passages that they read and are quoted throughout the movie are not from the book. They're from a free adaptation from various versions of the story, paraphrased by the screenwriter Charles Leavitt. The cast includes one Oscar winner, Kieran Culkin, and two Oscar nominees, Gina Rowlands and Sharon Stone. Gina Rowlands played Gloria Swanson in Gloria in 1980, while Sharon Stone played her in the remake in 1999. Although Kieran Culkin and Eldon Henderson share the majority of the screen time, they're not listed in the top billed cast, which is unusual because it's about them. But I mean, if you put two kids on the poster, then the audience aren't going to really know who they are. And I've actually even seen a poster with Gina Rowlands, Harry Dean Stanton and Sharon Stone with Kieran Culkin and Alden Hanson in silhouette, and it just looks really strange because it implies that the adults are going to be in it more than the children are. An actor called Ian Michael Smith was considered for the role of Kevin, and this is a particularly interesting thing because in real life Ian Michael Smith has Molkio syndrome. He was in a film called Simon Birch where he was the main character, and it is a film that I will be covering in another episode. Gene Rowlands and Jennifer Anderson would play mother and daughter in a film called Playing by Heart, which was released in the same year as The Mighty. This is British director Peter Chelsam's first American film, and the first scene in which Alden Hanson filmed with Sharon Stone, it was the scene where Kevin's body is driven off in an ambulance. Henson said that it would help him to adjust to the emotional overtone of the movie and settle his nerves about working with Sharon Stone. And quite frankly, I was a teenager in the 90s, and if I was working with Sharon Stone, I would have been nervous as well. Okay, that's it for this week. Next week, as we go to March, it's going to be Oscars month. First up, I'll be talking about Sensible, and a film grad student who applies for a job to be a carer for a blind veteran, but the veteran has other things in mind. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so via Bluesky at bluesky.com/film-ability. You can also email me at film-ability@outlook.com. And if you'd like to make a contribution to the things that I do here, you can find me at Patreon at patreon.com/film-ability. You can also find my book at Amazon on Kindle and paperback called Film Ability, A History of Disability in Cinema. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.